Okie dokie, that seems to be my tagline. Everybody's been telling me. So I have taken this picture of Oscar, this darling little portrait of this guy, and I drew it out. I took my photo and I made it a square. This is 10 by 10. So when I printed out, I had to add, in Photoshop, I had to add a little piece up here because the picture kind of chopped off his ear a little bit. And I obviously wasn't going to paint him like that. So I went in Photoshop and added some space above him and added the little tip of his ear. Then I took the photo and I folded it in half and in half. So I didn't do that full grid that I showed you guys last week because I didn't need to for this kind of subject. For the architectural one, I definitely needed some guidelines. For this, I just kind of went real lightly like this and like this just to center the picture. And I only took one pencil. It's a Cretacolor number 179, and it's just a burnt umber pencil. And as I was explaining before, when I press harder on the pencil, I get a darker value than when I lighten up. So I kind of did a one value block in, drawing it in. And I know it, you know, I know I lose the drawing when I do the underpainting, but I still do a really good drawing, as good as I can, because it keeps me, it's like the foundation of my painting. So I know even if I lose some of it, it's there underneath and I can get back to it. So I must almost overdraw everything because I love drawing and I think it's important. And again, I'm going to pick up some hard or soft pastels. This is a burnt sienna kind of color. And I'm going to block in the big shapes of him. And not looking for the lightest value, looking for the mid or darker value of each area. I know there's other things going on inside those big ears, but we're going to get to that later. We just have to get a base in there. And then I'm going to pick up kind of a gray something for his body. It's like a kind of a, it's a pretty color, like an umber. Just going to get a big block in for his chest area and his little legs. Now we're going to get something a little lighter in the ochre family. And I know it's really light up on the top of his head, but I'm not going to pay any attention to that right now. I'm just going to get the front part. I can see his skull. I can see the form. It's not a lot of light and dark in here. It's medium. It's good enough. But there's a side plane and a side plane to his skull. So I'm going to block in. I'm going to mix in a little bit of this more rusty color, lighter sienna with, they're the same value. You can see they're exactly the same value, so they're going to look like the same mass. We're going all the way down to his cute little nose. And I'm going to get a little darker version of that. Yeah, it's a more of an umber, again, kind of almost a greenish umber color to indicate the sides of his head. And I'm actually going to get a black, picking up a hard black pastel, because those eyes are really, really dark brown, but those pupils are really large. And I'm forgetting about the highlight for right now. I think I'm just going to make the whole thing black, because when even if I put a dark brown in here right now, it would have just looked black when I put the alcohol on it. All right, we're getting that covered, and I'm going to do the same for the front of his nose. The front of his nose, you probably can't see it on the camera, but when you look at the photo that I emailed you, you can see there's nostrils showing in there, but they're very kind of vague because it's so dark. So we're going to get one color for that. And the top of his nose, I'm going to make a little lighter, kind of a purpley blue. That one's too dark. I'm going to get this one. Again, I'm exaggerating the color. It's not that purpley blue, but I'm exaggerating it somewhat. And I'm using that darker one underneath maybe mix in a little bit of black on it because it's very dark right underneath where his mouth is. And then down here it gets a little less, I don't want that color. I'm going to use this. No, I don't want that either. Okay, that with this. All right, I picked up kind of a gray blue and I'm going to add a light yellow ochre on top of it for these little side parts of his face that are catching the light, and they're kind of lighter than the front part of his head. And underneath his eyes, you can see his eye socket is kind of formed by, almost looks like eyeliner to me, but I'm going to indicate some of that because that shows the form of the eye socket. Kind of going to put this all in one value over here on the side. And it gets kind of washed out back here. I'm going to make it more of a gray. And now I'm going to get something for the background. What am I going to do for the background? What am I going to do for the background is the question of the day. I like kind of the red tones in there, but it's going to be a combination of colors. I don't want it to be overpowering, and I don't want him to get lost in it. So it's going to be yeah, here's a bluish. I'm going to mix up the colors in here. I'm going to make it kind of a colorful background that will mush together when I mush. Is that a technical word? Mush. It's like a gray purple kind of color, which I think will really bring out, he's kind of a yellow orange. So we're doing the complementary color, even though they're all muted, they're not high chroma or high intensity. I think it'll blend nicely. And I'm pressing, I would say medium hard. I'm not drowning the paper or overfilling the paper. I just want to get enough on here to move it around when I apply the alcohol. So here's a red and a purpley blue and a green gray. And they're all the same value. They're very close. Actually, they're the same value pretty much. So we're just going to make a kind of abstract version of this whole thing back here. I liked my drawing a lot, and I kind of go, oh, I lost my drawing. I'm sure you guys get panicky. I know in the beginning I used to go, oh, that beautiful drawing, where did it go? But it's there, it'll be back. I know which direction it's going to go. Okay, so just seeing that there's no big, huge spaces of blank paper. And if there is, I will just fill it in before I put the alcohol on. I'm trying to see what, yeah, his little body is like here and then here. Okay. And this one I'm going to actually photograph too. So excuse me 1 second. I'm going to photograph this before I put on. I always forget to do that. But I know that Jules will like that, and she'll probably make it into some kind of video montage because that's what she does. All right, so I think I have enough on here, no big gaps of paper showing. And now I'm going to take my big cheap brush with some of the alcohol on it and just start my wash. Again, just dipping it in there. I don't care if it drips over here. It's going to be a really pretty dark background. Excuse me while I think I was a little stingy this morning when I poured out my alcohol because I didn't pour enough. In case everyone forgets what it is, it's got at the paint store, denatured alcohol. In California, you can't get it right now. Hopefully that won't last. Oops, big drip. Okay. I don't mind drips over here, but I don't really need a drip down the middle of his head. I guess I was being stingy with the alcohol because of doing the demo and the amount of time it takes to dry. The less alcohol, the quicker it dries, but it dries, still dry quick enough. Okay, now I'm going to switch to just a little smaller brush. Actually, I'm going to start with the lighter color. I should probably put music on when I'm doing this because I still never get used to the utter silence when everybody's on mute and I'm just sitting here and I could feel the faces staring at me, but still a funny feeling. Oh yeah, now that looks kind of creepy, huh? Two black holes. Okay, that is probably all I'm going to do for the underpainting. Okay, now that the underpainting has dried, we're going to come back in like I usually do. I'm going to find a light, it's just like a fleshy color pencil. I need to come in and, reorient my drawing and get some of the detail back around, certainly around the eyes. And that's going to be my first focal point. It's going to be these darling little big brown eyes. All right, so I'm coming back in now now you're going to see me doing some strokes. When I do fur, you're going to see me doing different kinds of strokes than I might do on a landscape. I'm going to start to do more kind of turning my hand and my color going in the direction of the fur. It really helps to start to build the form and starts to create the pattern of fur. One thing I want to come back in and do is kind of key out, he's got this really glowy light on the tip top of his little head. And I want to start to kind of indicate that light. It's kind of spilling over the top of his skull. I can see that. So I'm going to just kind of start to key that a little bit. And I used a very kind of almost a sky blue kind of color. And at the same time, I want to kind of come into the background just to meet up to that value so I can judge that value better, that real light value that I put on there. Okay, and I'm going to sneak a little red into that purple, just a little for now. All right, now back to the eyes. I'm going to come back in and picked up my black again. So I'm going to redo that big pupil. And now I got to look in my box for a very deep brown, which is a very soft Terry Ludwood brand, which I really love. for these darks. Sennelier makes some good darks too, but if you're finding in your sets that you're not able to get as dark as you want, that's where you have to supplement. I'll talk about that on one of the breaks, remind me. All right, and then I'm gonna sneak in, I have a funny highlight story because when I went to art school at the American Academy of Art, there was almost like a rule when you're doing a portrait that you put the highlight in last. And that's just kind of stuck in my head until I went to study with Albert Handel back in the late 70s. And he did the first demo I watched him do, a portrait demo. He puts the highlight in like now, like I just did. And he set me free. He was like, it's like I needed permission. He said he puts the highlight in as a focal point for himself while he's working. And sometimes the highlight gets put in and taken out a few times before it's actually the final product. And it's like I needed Albert's permission to do that. And I love doing that. It helps me get focused. It focuses the painting to me, and it's like, yeah, it may stay there forever, but it may not. It may just be like for the moment. But it just gives it like it looks like it's alive already to me. And then another thing that happens in photography, like when I'm looking at this little photo reference, there's two highlights, one on each, and I recommend putting in one and putting them in on the same corner, the same side on each eye, because you're getting all kinds of reflections from this. You know, she probably had her studio lighting on him because she's a professional photographer. You know, that was because it's her photo. But it doesn't always read well in a painting. So I'm going to work a little bit and kind of building up these eye sockets, getting some of the form, and then build the painting from there. I do this on a human portrait too. I feel like once I have those eyes set, not that they're done, but enough to build the painting correctly around it. If I get one thing correct, then I can, versus, you know, having this be incorrect and then building the whole painting around something that's incorrect. Sort of like the same idea that I was saying earlier about going for the main star of the show, the main focus, building it up to a, maybe not completely finished point, but a strong point, and then building around that. Because what happens otherwise is you're going to end up getting everything wrong around the main thing that's maybe not correct. That makes sense. And I'm picking up a stick of charcoal because it just looks like it could use a little softening without really altering the color. And then a pencil will come back in because there's these little eyelid that are catching the light. I can do a lot with the pencils too when I probably use pencils more on pet portraits than I normally use because it's just so easy to get that feeling of the fur. All right, I'm going to jump around a little bit now because I want to show you different things, even though I said to spend more time. You know, I think I have something going in here. I'm going to, like if I were doing this just by myself, I'd probably be spending more time just on those eyes, but I'm not going to do that for the sake of the demo. I'm picking up some warmer pinks and mixing them with some ochres to get that color of that little fur on the side of his face. So I want to get a little bit of that. He's got these cute little freckles at the top of his nose. Kind of charming. Again, and I also have to soften, you know, got hard edges that get left behind when you do the underpainting, which is typical, that have to get softened as I go. So let's do this. Let's gonna carve, I wanna like kind of cut in here a little bit. I think I'm gonna pick up some background color. Again, it's strong, but I don't think I'll keep it that strong, but I wanna carve out his little side of his face a little bit that I lost with the wash. Look at that, I got a big old, from that cheap brush, it's so funny. Got a little hair in there, a little big texture. Might be kind of fun. All right, let's get on this side a little bit. That looks better. Gonna just get a little bit, this is like a dark umber-ish color, green gray kind of color. I want to get underneath just to start to form his little, I don't know the names of parts of dogs, his mouth area. All right, let's see. I'm going to come back. I want to do a little bit up here, kind of carve out his ears a little bit because they're so much a part of him. I mean, they're like huge, the size of him. Like I'm using the hard pastel, like just a umber kind of color. Interesting colors inside that ear. And the trick will be to get the variations of color and keep them in the same value range. Keep hearing me talk about that. This is pretty much an olive, like an olive green that I picked up. But it's the same value as the wash I put on there. Okay, so we're going to get these, it's very dark right around the edges of the ear. So I'm picking up a pencil, brown pencil. See, his skull goes like here. Gotta get that right drawing of his little shape of his head before the ears come out. And then there's this really pretty kind of glow that the light is catching. And if I come back in here and just sort of mellow out the background, it's got a lot of brushwork, which I don't want it to be distracting. It's kind of, again, that thing of I don't want anything to be distracting from him. So the background could be colorful but subtle, without a lot of, yeah, I got a pretty background. There's blue and green and pink, and that's kind of how I'm going to work it as I finish out the background. Gives it some dimension without taking away from, distracting from Oscar. So I'm going to come back in and carve out these nostrils. You can see that there, you know, it looked like a very dark underpainting, but then when I come back in with the black, it's even, you can see that it dried a little lighter. So then the black I put on there. Now I have to take my pencil and pick up like a gray pencil. I want to take a second here and just kind of, I think the nose, the wash from the that I put on there got a little carried away on that side. So it's all a matter of like adjusting at this point now too, adding color and adjusting the drawing. And that goes on with a person portrait a lot. So getting it in and then it's just adjusting and adjusting and adjusting. The trick too will be to add enough of these kind of dashy strokes to make it look furry without making it look crazy. It's just, you know, it's not like I have to get every piece of fur, just like when you're doing a person and you get to the hair, in order to make it full head of hair, you do not need to get every single hair. There used to be a term we used at art school that would be called spaghetti heads. Like someone maybe to tell, it would be like you just tried to get every strand of hair to make it look like a head of hair. And almost less is better when you're doing fur or hair. I think it would go same if you put it into the landscape painting world. It's just you don't need to put every leaf on a tree to make it look like a full growth of tree. So same goes for fur and hair and yeah, these are really fun to do. I could do these all day long. Little critters. There's this little bit of light that's catching right underneath, just to kind of show a little bit more form in his bottom lip. Okay, I'm gonna take a break.